All right, we are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris, and this is my channel, We Love Comics. Excuse me for a moment, you're going to see a blank screen, because what I wanted to do is put this so you could see the chat while this is happening, so you're just not looking at a general picture, because I thought this was a topic that I wanted to discuss, and I saw other channels did it, so I wanted to put in my 2 cents about this, and we'll see where it goes. So to each and every one of you, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, whether you watch it live or you watch it days, weeks, or months later. So we got Tony, we got John is here, Fade to Black, hello, Comic Lover Omega, always a pleasure to see you. I always do these last second, so it's always amazing to me that people show up even without notification, so thank you for that. And the topic of discussion is the rumor going around that Marvel Comics, and Richard, hello, is going to potentially end making comic books forever. Quiet Storm is here, welcome. Now, Kelvin is here, he says, what's up? I basically want to say, in my opinion, that this is not going to happen. I wouldn't believe rumors like that. A lot of times it gets people all riled up, and what does that do? Creates sales. Now, the biggest reason that, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I don't work for Disney, I don't work for Marvel, so, you know, anything can happen. It's not impossible. But who collects comic books, for the most part? Now, some people will say, well, the people who love reading them. Now, that sounds great. That's a politically correct statement to make. But if you look at any channel on YouTube that makes comic books, that does a video, one about reading a book, and another one about how much a book is worth, the books that are talking about how much they're worth and what books to buy are going to triple and quadruple the storybook videos. It's just reality. So who buys mostly the comic books? Well, it's mostly, and most people are not going to want to hear this, but it's speculators and investors. Because if you've ever purchased more than one of the same comic for yourself, you're an investor. Or at least a collector at the very least, because if you were buying a book to read, it would be silly to buy 2 of the same book for yourself because they're the same exact story. So I know most people don't want to hear this, and if I have to be one of the channels that will discuss the reality of what is, not what we wish it to be, most people buy comics for collectability and for potential profit down the road. I mean, yes, of course, you're going to love reading them, but let's put it this way. If you're like me, who has probably 30,000 comics, if not more, there is no way if you spent every second of the day reading comics that you'd be able to read them all. So nobody reads every single one of their comics. It's just plain and simple. If you have that many, there's just physically no way unless you live to the age of 500. So most people are buying comic books for investment purposes. I mean, that's why, like, when they did the Walking Dead recent bagged issue, and DC has done it, and Marvel's done it, and there's a chance where you could find a specific variant hidden in one of the bags. You saw people, and I myself am guilty of this, I'm not going to be ashamed of it because I did a video about it, but they'll buy multiple of the same book. They just have different covers. I mean, the same thing, look at variants. Why would somebody, if they just bought comics for the love of reading them, why would they ever buy a variant? Unless they like spending more money. Because a variant is the same book, just a different cover. So unfortunately, there are people who just for some reason or another, they don't want to be straightforward, they don't want to be honest. So if Marvel decided that tomorrow they are going to stop making comic books, say goodbye to comic book stores, because they'll go out of business. Because Marvel, they make the most money. That's Marvel and DC, but Marvel is #1, plain and simple when it comes to retail sales. DC isn't that far away. But Image and other independent companies are very far away. They would not be sustainable for comic book stores to survive. Now, obviously, Marvel or Disney is not really going to care about a local comic book shop. If they did, they wouldn't do those 1 in 100, 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000 variants that the small stores could never afford. So they probably wouldn't mind comic stores going out of business. See, I think the problem is these days with these companies, and Marvel is starting to become more and more obvious about this as well. It's unfortunate, and they were just making quality movies for a long time without getting into all the other touchy subjects, but it seems like they're the next, company in line to start getting down a dangerous road. That instead of making quality products and actually giving the fans what they want, you notice that all these companies now are making excuses. I mean, even with the Captain Marvel thing, look at what Fandango did with the Rotten Tomatoes, where now you're no longer allowed, before a movie comes out, audiences are no longer allowed to say whether they want to see a movie or not. So this, to me, from a business sense, and I always want to say thank you to this, and this is really nice of you, Gary. Gary C. did a $20 super chat. I think that's the most I've ever gotten, and that's incredible. So thank you for that. But he says, just wanted to say thank you for the information you share. And you're very welcome, because I understand the passion that people have for comic books. I love them myself. That's why I named my channel We Love Comics. Despite what a few people might want to claim, I have every comic other than the ones that got stolen, and about maybe 15 I've sold in the past 30 years. I have all of my comics. I mean, just ask my wife. She has to see all these boxes, and that's just some of them. So I understand the passion that people have. But you have to think in a business point of view. To me, if Marvel was to stop making comic books, I mean, DC would love that, and the independent companies would love that, and they would probably gain more subscribers in the long term. I mean, in the short term. But in the long term, without Marvel being there for all their major characters, for people to continue to read, people are going to lose interest and start to walk away. And unfortunately, the people like, for example, because I recommend a lot of independent comics. If you see my must-have comics when I was doing them, especially weekly, and I have them on here, I always showed a lot of independent comics. I loved supporting independents. And a lot of people who buy independents love to read them. But they're not the majority. And that's not going to be sustainable. That's why when a Marvel comic comes out in a comic book store, there are sometimes hundreds of that issue. But do you ever notice even what seems to be a popular... I mean, look at The Source. Remember how popular that was a couple of months ago when they were talking about that #1 issue coming out? In my store, I went there the second it opened, and there were 3 of them on the shelf. So you have to go by the reality, not the hopefulness, not the wishful thinking, not the groupthink of what everybody wants something to be. You have to notice the reality. And the reality is comic book stores spend most of their money buying Marvel comics. You'll have DC next, and then a far third you'll have Image, and then you'll have a couple of the other independents. But you'll notice the Marvel and DC books are 30 to 1. So Marvel, being the #1 distributor of comic books, if they decided we're not going to do this anymore, there goes the comic books. There goes the comic book stores. A lot of people will end up going out of business because there will be plenty of people that will be so mad they'll say, you know what, I don't want to buy any comics, and will walk away. So a lot of times publicity is a stunt. Things like this, in my opinion, I mean, look what it's doing. I'm not the only one that's talked about this. It took me a couple of days because my situation with our cat, I've had to make priorities, and our cat's health and well-being is more important. So it took me a couple of days. Plus, people like Reggie made a video, and I don't want to step on his toes and do a video the exact same day because that's disrespectful, and I love his channel. But other people are talking about it. And what does that do? Gives them free advertisement. Unfortunately, a lot of times companies will take us for granted and take advantage of our passion and use it against us for profit. And it works. There really is no bad press. Because let's say, for example, you're so mad at Marvel. Let's say you absolutely love DC and you hate Marvel. And this is a perfect excuse to go to Marvel YouTube channel and go and thumb down their video. Well, you have to sit through an advertisement to do that. So they make money off of you. So I think this is something that will give them free press, which is working. And Tony Tiger 337 says, "Sad there is no such thing as bad press and Marvel knows it." You're absolutely right. And they take advantage of it. Unfortunately, most people that have a passion for something tend to have blinders on. And I think that's why some people, like somebody made a comment, and I'm not going to say who, because they're probably a little right about it, that they say that maybe some people don't like me because I come across as pompous or something, or arrogant. I come through experience. I have my own 2 businesses. Now, right now, they're not very successful, but, you know, sometimes you fall backwards. You just got to pick up and continue forward. But I know a lot about how businesses work. And you have to separate the passion part to the reality. Stockholders don't care what characters you like, unless it is something they could profit off of. And Marvel would get such hatred. I mean, look what happened with The Last Jedi. Yes, it made a lot of money, but it also made movies like Solo lose a lot of money. Because there are people, and I'm not just the only one, that are getting tired of being lectured, getting tired of being told what to do and how to think. So Marvel should write quality comics instead of just saying, well, they're not selling, we keep throwing it down people's throats and they don't spend the money, so I guess we should just throw in the towel. That doesn't make economic sense. I mean, whether you like Captain Marvel or not, look how many times her comic alone has been rebooted in the past decade. And the reason they do it is people will buy a #1 issue. I was one of those people that did it all the time myself, buying the variants. Back in 2016, 2017, I was literally spending $100 to $200 every week on new comics. Until I saw what was really the direction they were headed. And it wasn't valuable or worth it anymore, buying all of those variants of the same cover. Sometimes you have to fail in business to understand how to succeed. So, Marvel is going to talk about this, and they might even be considering it. But do you think the shareholders of Disney and Marvel would allow them to do something that will lower their stock value of their company? Doesn't matter who owns the companies these days if you are a public company that has stocks, because people that buy stocks have a say in the company's direction. Why do you think if a movie does poorly, even if they were going to do a trilogy or a second movie, why all of a sudden they don't get done? I mean, look at the Warcraft movie, the World of Warcraft movie, which I thought was a very good movie. But because it didn't become a quote-unquote financial success, they're not making another one, even though they were planning on it. There were plenty of movies that were supposed to get trilogies. I mean, look at the Ghostbusters reboot. Look at all the movies that Disney stopped with what they were planning on doing with the Star Wars franchise. People and their money dictate. It doesn't matter what they tell you or preach to you. Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes can shut down the audience ability to say they're not going to see a film. That's not going to stop people. They're not all of a sudden going to say, well, since I can't mention I'm not going to see it, I guess I'll just go spend the money and watch it. No, they're going to do things with their money. Money talks. And there is no way the shareholders of Disney and Marvel, especially you're also got to include Fox, because remember, with this whole transaction that's with Disney acquiring Fox, there's going to be a lot of people in the Fox companies that are getting stock options in Disney. Do you think one of the first things they want to hear is their stock being lowered because Marvel decided to get rid of their comic book line? It's just not economically viable. and it would hurt the industry in a whole. It would hurt DC. It would hurt Image, because how many people, and I've done this myself, you go to a comic book store maybe just to buy one book. You heard about a book, and then you're going there to see if it's there. And then all of a sudden, oh, let me pick up this issue. And oh, there's a new #1. Let me check that out. And oh, new independent book. And you know what? My child or my sister or my brother or mother or whatever, they always wanted that bobblehead. Let me pick that up. Look at this nice little Captain America keychain. Did you ever do that where you went in shopping somewhere? You can even look at grocery shopping. You say, oh, I'm just going to pick up some milk and eggs. Next thing you know, you come back with a whole basket of stuff. All that is going to disappear. So somebody, let's say, that loves Marvel and goes into the comic book store for Marvel. And once they get there, they see the new Batman comic and they love the cover. They say, you know what, I'm going to pick that up as well. Well, if that person is upset that Marvel got rid of the comics and they don't go to the comic book store anymore, all the other things they could have purchased is also being a factor that will affect and will guarantee comic book stores' demise. Now, do you think that's going to help our community or hurt it? I don't think Marvel is that dumb. But their way of thinking, I can understand why they would even say this, because I can guarantee you with this whole SJW movement, I know a lot of people don't want to hear about that, or they roll their eyes or get aggravated, but it is reality and it is what it is, so you can either turn away and let it increase or deal with it and fix the problem. I can almost guarantee that a lot of people that are making these SJW comics are sitting there, well, we're giving them everything that we're saying that they should want, and they don't buy it. So let's just shut it all down. I can understand them thinking of it that way. But it's just not going to happen. So, if you're one of those people that thinks that Marvel Comics is going to stop, I mean, because look at it this way. Everybody's, and this is one thing I always find funny. People say, oh, well, you know, the hottest comic just came out. Let's say I made a video that says, oh, you got to get this comic. And all of a sudden it's sold out. Well, you know what? You can go on the Scout website and get the PDF file for free. So if you love reading comics, you can get a digital copy of any book. And Marvel might think, well, we're just going to go digital. It's not going to happen because, again, they get the majority of their money because of speculators and investors. Just look at the 90s. People were buying, and I was suckered into it when I was a teenager because my comic book store said, oh, you got to get multiple copies of this Superman 75. Your kids will go through college. When somebody buys a digital copy, they don't buy more than one. How many people do you know, whatever comic book channel is out there, how many channels have you seen where somebody has more than one copy of a comic? Do you think they bought it because they just wanted to help the comic book store or eBay or wherever they got it? They want to help their business and say, oh, I think I'll buy two? No, they bought it because maybe one's a reader and maybe another one's for investment, or maybe both are investment, or maybe somebody bought 20 copies. One of my hater channels, which I'm not going to mention, I know for a fact they have a specific book that I won't talk about where they have multiple, about 10 to 20 copies of that book. You think he bought them because he loved the #1 issue that much? Or do you think it might be for investment purposes? And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But if all of a sudden Marvel decided, all right, we're going to get rid of the physical copies and we're just going to go with digital, they're going to be really shocked at how much money they're not going to make. Because now, instead of people buying 5, 10 copies, I mean, just look on eBay. When a hot book gets a TV show or a movie, all you have to do is go on eBay and you'll see people selling 10 of them. So the next movie that comes out, how many people are going to rush to buy the digital copy? I mean, realistically, let's say Marvel ends it tomorrow, and then the day after, they're introducing a new character that's going to get his own TV show. You going to run out and buy the digital copy of that book? And if you did, are you going to buy more than one? How much money do you think Marvel will lose? So I think their problem is they're thinking the wrong way. They should get rid of the garbage comics that they've been making lately and start doing quality. There's a reason why places like Image are getting a lot of TV and movie deals lately. Why? Because they're putting out some quality stories and quality products. I mean, it's easy for Disney, who owns the Marvel company, to make a Marvel movie with their Marvel characters. These independent companies like Image and others who are getting these TV deals, that's not from their own company. That's from somebody else's company saying, you know what? We like your product so much, we want to purchase the rights to it. Disney owns Marvel. It's very easy for them to make a movie with their own characters. Good or bad. So I want people to think beyond the passion. I mean, if somebody wants to hate me for it, that's fine. That's perfectly wonderful. I don't care at this point. I bring it up because I want them to see that it doesn't affect me, it doesn't bother me. But my point is, you have to think, if you want this to be something where you don't string yourself up or have a heart attack at 30, to see the bigger picture of things. So I would not worry about Marvel, because even if they did it, within 6 months they'd be back to making comics again. To me, that wouldn't surprise me that Marvel does this, it actually does it, but as a plan to say, well, you know what, we'll do it for 6 months, we'll get everybody all upset and anxious and demanding and doing protests and filing petitions to get comics back, and we'll bring them back and we'll start over again with a whole bunch of new #1s. And then all of a sudden, thousands upon thousands of people start buying them all up. That would not shock me. That's the kind of thing Marvel does, and I love Marvel. But you gotta be real. That's why I tell people all the time, be careful about brand loyalty and bias. Don't let anybody take advantage of you. Make them earn your money. You work hard for your money. Don't just throw it away. So to me, it wouldn't shock me if they decided to do this, but only was going to plan ahead and do it temporarily, because they're going to lose a lot of money. And comic book stores are not going to be very happy because, you know, the big chained ones will survive. The corporate-owned ones. And I'm not dignifying them with a name, but you know who I'm talking about. But the local mom-and-pop stores, they will not be able to survive. My nearest comic book shop is 30 minutes away. You think I'm going to drive more than that to buy some comics if that store goes out of business? Many people all of a sudden will lose their opportunity to even buy other companies' products. So rest assured, people, the physical comic is here to stay. And it's because, and the readers and lovers of comics should be kissing the ground of the investor and the speculator, because they're the ones that are keeping physical comics viable. So think about that. When I always get people that say, oh, Chris is one of the main reasons why comics are the way they are. Really? I have that much of an influence? And even if I did, it's the speculators that are buying 10 books. No reader of comics is buying 10 of the same book. And they're definitely not doing it if they're buying a digital copy. So you know who's keeping the comics that you love alive and the comic book stores from going under? The speculators and the investors. And I guarantee you that's a hard pill to swallow. Because a person that buys books for only the love of reading them, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We need the readers just as much as they need the speculators. They just don't want to see it that way. But they don't understand that we're the people that are keeping everything alive by spending multiple amounts of money on multiple books. And I can't even see myself as a well, I don't know. Because, I mean, I don't sell any of my books. I will eventually. I mean, I'm not putting them in my grave as fertilizer. I've already said I have a plan. By the time I'm 50 to 55, at that point, I want to sell the books, have somebody else enjoy them, and I can use money to retire and go spend the rest of my life doing some things that I love to do. And the best part is, even if you sell a book, you can always buy it back again when the prices dip. I mean, I had many of my comics stolen from me. Took me a long time to get them back, and I got them in lower grade, but hey, Remember what I say, low grade is better than no grade, especially if that's all you can afford. So this is why I try and plead to the community to stop the whole hatred thing and to work with each other and understand that we need each other. We keep fighting. It's like the whole divide and conquer thing. We're not uniting to help fix a problem. Say, hey, Marvel, do a better job instead of threatening to get rid of what we love. How is that going to help any side? This is what happens when people are afraid to speak out and turn a blind eye. Like I've said in videos, evil thrives when good people do nothing. So, oh, I don't want to rock the boat, or I'm making some money here. I don't want to disrupt that. You know, I have a lot of Captain Marvel comics, and me talking down to the Captain Marvel movie, sharing my opinion of it, would actually potentially devalue my comics. But I care more about principle than money. Like I've said before, by their deeds you shall know them. So we need each other. Some they don't want to hear it. But it doesn't matter. You know, you could be sitting there on the edge of a cliff, and all of a sudden there's an earthquake, and you could sit there saying, oh, I'm going to cover my ears so I can't hear that earthquake, and I'm going to cover my eyes because I can't see it, and I'm just going to stand there, and maybe it'll go away. Do you think good things are going to happen by doing that? And yeah, stolen. I had all of my high-grade major key books like Hulk 181, Tales of Suspense 39, X-Men 2, Avengers 2, 3, 4, 8, a whole bunch of I literally had a 9.6 to a 9.8 Conan #1. My house got robbed years back by my ex-fiance's father. I learned that years later. And she also put me in about $15,000 in debt, stealing my credit cards and putting a whole bunch of stuff under my name. And since she knew when I worked, she would go to my house and steal the credit card bills from my mailbox, so I didn't learn about it until years later. And had to refinance my house twice. But yeah, about what would be probably about $100,000 worth of comics today was stolen from me. It's part of life. So as far as Marvel's concerned, they would be pretty stupid if they stopped making comics. And people of all loving of comics should be concerned and worried about that. Because it will affect everyone. And if you don't think it does, what I would recommend is learn a little bit more about business. It's going to affect everyone. They are one of the quote-unquote too big to fail if you want the comic book industry to be alive. Because if they're going to survive on digital comics, they're going to be awoken pretty quick of how much money they're not making anymore. Because goodbye speculators, goodbye investors. And then the people who used to make fun of us and trash those people would be begging them to come back. Because there goes their comic book stores, there goes their physical comics, there goes any chance of making any kind of money for your future, for your children. How many people have these comics and they're going to give them to their children and grandchildren? Say goodbye to that. And I mean, for me as an investor, with all older comics, all my Bronze Age, Silver Age, and Golden Age keys, if all of a sudden they're not making new comics anymore, you know how much more money I would make? So it actually would benefit an investor and a collector for them to go out of business. I don't want that. I see the bigger picture. And I don't even buy that many new comics anymore. So I made some hour-long videos the other day. I don't want to get that crazy into this, so this is half hour. I'm going to do the surprise subscriber shout-out, and hopefully it won't be like it was the other day. But hey, you know, what are you going to do? I found that funny. Just block the person and they can have a nice life being angry. So today I am going to do the surprise subscriber shout out for 5 Arts Liberalis. Thank you so much. Again, I want to give a shout out to the gentleman that did the super chat, Gary C. That was really kind of you. Anybody that ever does the super chats, I will always stop what I'm talking about and instantly give them a thank you and a shout out. because that's well-deserved, and I'm not one of those channels that's going to let 30 of them go by. I mean, if somebody's going to be kind enough to do something like that, I want to make sure that they know about it. Richard said, did you sue your ex-wife? The problem is, by the time she admitted it, it was already about almost 10 years later, so there's nothing that could be done. And she technically didn't do it. Her father did. And her father, I learned, is an ex-con. I learned a lot of things after the fact. I also learned that she gave me a false name, and we were living together at one point. Whole scam thing. Definitely a topic for another time. So, but it is what it is. I became a DJ because of that, because years later, when I got my insurance check for all the things that were stolen, I ended up buying my karaoke DJ business, which actually kept me alive to this day. So that's why I always tell people, don't worry about bad things that happen, because eventually good things can come from them. So always think the bigger picture. So, who knows where my life would be? Who knows if I would have even met my wife if that stuff didn't happen and it put me on a path in a different direction than what I thought I was going to be in. So always trust the paths that you're going on, even if they instantly change, because it might be bringing you somewhere better, and sometimes you just got to take the long way around to find out. Good thing you didn't marry her. Yeah, we were close. But that's a story for another time. So thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, if you were kind enough to give it a thumbs up, show the negative people that the positive people outweigh them 20-1. So if you are kind enough to hit that like button, it means a lot to me. It does help my channel. If you want to favor or share this, that helps as well. I always appreciate those that take the time to do that. Subscribe if you want to, if you think I've earned the subscription. And even if you don't, come by anytime, leave a comment. And one thing I want to say about, somebody was talking about freedom of speech when it came to comments. First of all, there are times where YouTube will automatically put a comment in spam. The other day, I think somebody just said hello or something, a one-word thing, and YouTube put it in spam. So it's not me blocking people. It's YouTube, for some reason, putting certain comments under spam. But if somebody's going to be nasty, I'm not going to publicize it. I'm going to delete it. And I'll give you a prime example. If you were throwing a party and you invited a bunch of your friends and they invited somebody that was pretty nasty and disrespectful to all of your guests, you letting that person stay or you kicking them out? Just because, and this is the thing they have to understand, they had the freedom to say whatever they wanted. I didn't put them in jail. They weren't allowed to not say it. But I don't have to accept it either. You know, somebody could have the freedom of speech to write curse words on your house, but you have the right to clean it off. So that's the whole freedom of speech thing. I didn't stop anybody from saying something, but if they're going to say nothing but nasty things, it's not going to see the light of day. Just like if somebody came to my house and started disrespecting me or my wife, they're getting thrown out. They have the right to say stupid things. They didn't go to jail for it, so they might not need to understand what freedom of speech is all about. That doesn't mean you go up to a priest and start cursing him out just because you have the freedom to do so. There is a thing called respect. So, there's my little lecture for the day. I don't want to keep rambling because you guys will know me. This will be a 6-hour video. Some of you enjoy it, many don't, but I gotta be me. And you gotta be you, so thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day. And don't forget to have your trolls spayed or neutered. And don't forget, it's not you, it's not I, it's We Love Comics. And, oh, I got to make sure, because I just saw this. Joseph Taylor did a $9.99 Super Chat, so thank you. I almost missed that. And if you ever do a Super Chat, there's a way you could say something. So if you want to promote your own channel or something you're selling or just to say hi, please do. But thank you, Joseph. That was really kind of you. And I'm glad I saw that before I ended it, because I always want to give those shout-outs. So thank you again, everybody. Great day, and I'll see you soon.